Bessie Brown Joyce. I was 3 months old when my parents moved here in 1947. I'm going to say that I lived on Jane Street. I lived on Morrow Street, and I lived on Gray Street. I remember living on Jane Street, and it was a little small house with an outhouse behind it. Morrow, the streets over here were not paved. There's rocks on the street.
Right.
And we walked around with no shoes on the rocks. And then they finally paved it. I guess we had moved out by the time they had paved it. Because we played in the dirt. And then on Morrow Street, growing up on Morrow Street, I remember we had the landing. You just walk out and down the landing. We didn't have the steps until later. And I remember we used to play on the landing, and the steps to go down to the apartment under us was where I would sit. And that's how I got the snail all over me. And then when they changed it and put the steps on the side of the apartment, we used to play in that area. It's like a driveway. And I remember that my dad he was a glass cutter. He worked for Rayata. And nobody cut the glass but my dad. My mother was a domestic worker. And she was off on Thursdays.
One lady on Corlin, Miss Warren.
Yeah, Miss Williamson.
And Miss Warren.
And Miss Williamson.
Miss Williamson lived on
Oh,
Pearson
Miss
Drive.
Williamson.
That's right, both of them.
Pearson Drive.
Miss Williamson on Pearson Drive, yeah.
Yeah, Miss One, we
On
used to
Corlin.
walk past her house going to, when we didn't sneak through the woods.
Right.
We'd go past her house and go down Goodger Street to go to school. And then there was a lady, my mother, I remember her making our dresses. She would sew them by hand. So she used to sew them and make our clothes. And when you came home, you had to take them off and hang them up. And you put on your holy clothes to go outside and play. But those were good times. They used to build wagons too. And there was this man that used to get steering wheels for us and wheels for our cars. And they would turn. They knew how to stop them and everything. We'd go flying down Gray Street. And you come up in front of the house, there's a hill. And we'd go all the way down and up the hill, and then they would back down and then turn it around. So that was a lot of fun. And I remember the food that they would have when we were out of school. The ladies used to cook food, bring food for us to eat because our parents were working. So the ladies that didn't work and didn't have children, they took care of us. And they fed us. And there was a lady that used to live on the corner of Gay Street and Madison, right up here. She used to bake cakes. And she would always give us a slice of cake. And she'd tell us to sit down on the steps. And she'd bring each of us a slice of cake. And then on Gray Street, Reverend Mason's wife, she used to sit and knit. And we'd be playing ball, and my ball would go in there over their fence into the yard. And she would sit there, and we would ask if we could get our ball, and she would say, "What ball?" And she would pick up that ball and put it under her knitting things and say, "I have not seen a ball." And we'd be looking at her like,
I know.
"Well, it been over the fence right there. Do you see a ball?" And never give us our ball back. So we'd have to find something else to do. In the winter time, you couldn't go outside, but we used to go out in the snow and stuff. And we had a stove in our dining room and one in the back middle bedroom. And my daddy would have that so hot, we used to put the windows put the windows up to cool off. And but he came home every day at lunchtime and made sure the fire was good and warm. So when we got out of school, because we had to walk to school, and when I was going to Stevens Lee, we would walk to school, and Mama used to say, "Now you don't put your hand in the get them warm at the stove because they're gonna ache." Boy, my hands were aching so bad I was crying. And but when we walked to school, we walked as a group. And when Mama had money, she'd give us 10 cents to ride the bus, 5 or 10 cents. But we get to ride the bus, and but a lot more often we walked to school in the cold. You were allowed to wear pants and be warm, but when you got to school, the girls had to take the pants off. And I just all the things that we learned. We never left this community. Yeah, and there was a man that used to
Mr. Carson.
kill a hog. Going down that driveway, and he used to hang it up on this wood thing, and he would slit, cut it open, because we would stand there and watch it. It was a hill that used to come down. If you go out Madison Street, you go over the hill to get to Morrow Street, Church, and all that area over there. And Mr. Horn, was that his name? He had his mule and his wagon on Jersey Street with his garden all down there. Every time I come around Morrow Street, I always think about him being down that hill. And I have a picture that my mother cut out of she took the whole page out of him and his horse. He was in the news, the Citizen Times thing, and he was a quiet man, very quiet man, and I think he used to bring the wagon through Stumptown.
He did. He's driving. Yes, he sure did.
Stumptown and everything. I remember him, and I remember all the old men that used to be sitting in Mr. Howard's store. And Mr. Lonnie.
Reverend Ward and Mr. Lonnie.
Yeah, they be asleep.
And they're asleep. We got pictures of them too.
We have pictures of those of that. And they just sit around, and Mr. Howard would always be leaning down on the counter.
Right.
And the last thing is, I remember these guys on Saturday night would sing up under the light, and they had harmony. You remember that? But I don't remember who all it was that would sing it, but we would sit on the porch, and that was our entertainment on Saturday night. Well, I left in 1970. It was still intact. I guess urban renewal was just beginning to start, but they were in other areas, you know. And I went to D.C., and I came home for vacation, usually a week or two, when I had time, you know, when I could take my vacation and everything. It had changed probably early part of the 80s.
I was so right.
When it was changed a lot. And then I came at one time and it was just gone. And it just wasn't here anymore. I was sad that day because, but in my mind, I know where, I might not remember the names, but I know where every house is now. I still have it in my mind where everybody lived. From here over to end of Morrow Street. Because we were in this community all the time. And I wasn't here during that time. I know somebody offered to buy our house. That's when they were going to put a road through or something, a highway or something they were talking about. And my dad told me he wasn't selling his house. You know, he got to have somewhere for his children. So I just remember that. I remember they came to the house to do that.
And now you're there today.
Yeah, my mama, she gave me the law. She said, your daddy worked hard for this house, and you need to keep it going. So I'm going to figure out what I'm going to do before I die, and what's going to happen, you know, because she really wanted that. So.